does the district superintendent have the governance to come in and totally revamp the funding and allotment system? So I'm like, I don't think that that's realistic, at least based off of our state structure and how districts and the state operates.
Right.
Exactly.
And I almost felt like just from the very beginning of the letter, it's like, this is what we did last year. We're going to continue it. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, did you first break down for families? Like, how did it work last year? What's the data to support that it worked? You know, it just, and I know a lot of the case studies are like that. Stuff is missing. You know, you don't get all the pieces.
Mm-hmm.
But in that letter sent to families, I would have liked for the superintendent to expose a little more, especially if you want buy-in from the family and community.
Right, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I struggle with that. And another thing too, in my undergrad, a long time ago, but I had actually taken some education classes. So I was like, the setup of this particular student-based funding looks familiar. And I was like, okay, brain, I need for you to work. What does it look familiar with? And it looks familiar with the Wisconsin voucher program. And they had stopped calling it voucher in 1989. That's when they originally launched it. But now they call it like the money follows the student. So I'm like, okay, I knew it was something somewhere out there. And it kind of like seems like to mimic it a little bit when we're talking about funding and looking at what the students' educational needs are and kind of tiering that with funding that goes with the student to the school, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. All right, so since we're already on fire with the conversation,
I know.
I'm good. I don't know. Do you want me to do the same thing I did the last time? Like start the PowerPoint, just jot down some stuff.
We can do that, and then I can send you or whoever's gonna do the PowerPoint. I know I don't have the leverage to do it right now.
I love doing PowerPoints. I'd rather do that than talk. So,
So we'll send you everything. I have the side of the write-up where we're in support of, and so I can send you what I have, and we can just tie everything together.
Okay. So is it Sheldon, would it be easier for you to do the power, or it doesn't matter, right?
It doesn't matter. What you did last time was helpful. That sort of started me off. And
okay.
When you wrote down the ideas that we had, that was helpful.
Okay. Come on, computer, move faster. All right. So we decided to start off with like we broke apart, right? So two of us took the appropriate, is it appropriate, and then inappropriate. Right?
Right.
Okay. So I'm just gonna, for the sake of time, because Zoom will cut us off.
Have you started recording yet?
Yes. I just started like 3 minutes ago.
Okay.
Okay. So do we want to start with appropriate?
So we can, but the only thing about it is I can't access my files when Zoom is up like this. I don't know what it is.
Really?
It just totally like it takes over my entire screen. So I'm trying to minimize it and see what I can do.
Okay, or you tell me, I can pull something up for you. Like I could pull the letter up. I could pull the Leandro case. You tell me.
I just had it kind of all written out.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I had it all kind of typed out for presentation purposes. So let me do this. Is it okay? Well, I don't want to leave the meeting. That wouldn't make sense. I'm just trying to minimize things so that I can get to where my information.
If you can you minimize your Zoom screen?
I've already done that, where right now it's only you showing and whoever the person is. So exit full screen.
So who?
Okay, it's coming up now.
Okay.
Okay. So we were talking about the superintendent's plan appropriateness and inappropriateness of the plan. So two of us were taking the appropriateness and two others of us were taking the inappropriateness. All right. So I have my content up now.
Okay. So whenever we can just basically answer the questions. Let me get back to the questions.
Okay.
So is the superintendent's plan appropriate? We're going to present both sides, and then we're going to address the legal and ethical concerns from the lesson plan, the role of the principal. So I guess just to make it to the point, do you feel it was appropriate? And then I guess support it.
Well, from the position of balancing the scale in regards to funding for low wealth communities communities, I think that it is appropriate. I think the modification of the funding formula actually does resolve the disparities as it relates to students and making sure that their educational needs are being met. I support it in reference to the infrastructure looks like it gives more transparency as to how funding is actually utilized, but it also gives flexibility to the principal as it relates to the discretionary usage of the funds for programs that students need. As far as on the legal ethical concern side, I was like 2 thumbs up in reference to justice with fairness, equality, and justice. Definitely, I feel like it addresses under the care section, educational equality again, with concerns and connections. It definitely does establish a connection. I think it definitely gives low-income communities a sigh of relief in reference to how kids are actually going to be educated from those impoverished or, like we said, low-income communities. It helps to address the achievement gap that seems to be getting wider and wider. It establishes relationships and collaboration as it relates to decision making, connection as it relates to, again, we're talking about flexibility and establishing a platform for kids to truly be successful and it's not based on the economic surroundings or community for which they live in, or should I say district. On the professional end, I think definitely accountability for students' academic success and social success. It models awareness, again, reflective practice, transparency, definitely ethical behavior. It safeguards the values of democracy, equality, and diversity. It considers and evaluates potential moral, legal consequences as it relates to decision making. We're what, 6 decades out, and we're still talking about civil rights and how do we address the rights of those that are not as fortunate in receiving a quality education. Definitely it acts in, the platform seems to act in the best interest of the student. Mm-hmm. And so all around, I'm definitely in support of what it looks like in relationship to educating students.
I think it's appropriate also because it involves all of the stakeholders. Mm-hmm. I like the fact that he's going to bring it before the community and allow the community to have some say, or at least to look at what they have planned. and to allow the teachers and the parents and the community to get involved. This matches number H, where it says that the principal will allow the parents of children in the school and other interested persons to review and obtain such documents like the budget plan and so forth, and whatever they're going to do about the budget. So I think that that it is appropriate for that piece.
Okay, very good. H, I see what you said. I'm just going to put H right in there. Okay. Do we want to add anything else for the appropriate side? Because we did address we address, so you both addressed number 3. So number 2, review the case, Leandro case from North Carolina. Did you want to add anything from that case?
Well, what I will say is that when you look at it on the Duke's website, it looks as if everything is conclusive as it relates to the case, but there is actually not. There is substantial follow-up that the actual judge made recommendations on, and I can actually read those. 2018, the work by several entities ramped up in ways that may soon lead to fundamental shifts in the state's funding for public schools. In the landmark court case, Leandro versus State, Judge David Lee ordered independent consultant West Ed to create an in-depth report to be released in 2019, which will review and analyze North Carolina's performance on the dimensions of adequacy and equality in school finances. Separately, the Governor's Commission on Access to Sound Basic Education has been examined in the key areas highlighted in the Leandro's case and will engage in implementation of remedial process. In addition, the General Assembly Joint Legislative Task Force on Education Finance Reform continues to consider a major overhaul of the state school finance system based on weighted student funding formula, with a final report due October 2019. So this may be introduced to us in class in looking at what the weighted student funding formula is, because that is another name for the student-based budgeting. Student-based formula for actually budgeting how funds are allocated towards students.
Okay. Well, we lost Toinette. She lost power.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's what I see.
Storm.
Okay.
Yeah, the storm. She lost power.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so that's very good. Did you want to add anything, Sheldon, about the case in connection to it being appropriate, or?
No, I've got something for the inappropriate, I think. But
okay.
You're on the wrong team.
Well, look, I think we have to have both sides. So I'm sort of in between.
Yes. Okay. So let's talk about the inappropriate. And obviously, I like the fact that we split it up.
Mm-hmm.
But Tanya, if you want to jump in with the inappropriate, please do, because I could see both sides.
Yeah.
I struggle with staying on the side of appropriateness because, again, there's so much that talks about the inappropriateness of it.
Right.
And again, before we started recording, talking about, does the superintendent have that much power to implement something that doesn't seem like it came down the ranks from the General Assembly, DPI, now it's on the state's, on the district's desk, and now it gives that level of authority for full implementation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I was thinking, I'm sorry. I was thinking also, when they make decisions, the superintendent has to take it before the Board of Education. And every Board of Education has an attorney who understands, all of the laws. And so I don't know if, wow, we got a storm now. I don't know if it's appropriate for them to make the decisions without taking it to the board.
Right.
And then explain that also to the community and to the parents, and allow them to understand how the formula was developed.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't seem fair. I don't know.
Yeah.
But there's a part in the case that it says that the schools are, their budgets are determined by the adequacy of resources,
Mm-hmm.
whether the school needs adequate resources, whatever that means. I mean, who's to say who has adequate resources? We're at a school who has children who are from low-income families. Should we have adequate resources?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like, who determines that?
Yeah, who determines that?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I'm sort of in between, because we do have some resources. We have district resources, and we have the same resources as other schools. But I'm sure other schools also have additional resources that we don't have because of the funds. And so should they determine the amount of money that the school gets because we have adequate resources already? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
And so that's why I was just sort of in between.
Yeah, and I noticed in reading the Leandro case, when I was going through it, like reading everything, I just had a list of questions. Like, that's how I was jotting down notes. Like, I just had questions. So I noticed in the Leandro case, it stated, neither school districts nor counties have any constitutional right to equal funding. So that's a law, that there is no equal funding. But then I wanted to know, if you notice in the letter the superintendent wrote, she stated right in the beginning, and we talked about this in the beginning of our conversation, that CBB was piloted last year in 4 schools. So what about the other schools? Like, what qualified those 4 schools? Like, she never even broke that down. Now, granted, I don't know if that was in a previous letter sent home. I don't know if when they first piloted this, maybe in the beginning of the school year, she broke down the data and how they chose those 4 schools. But it did look a little fishy when you get to the bottom of her letter, where she states, if you have any questions about this or any concerns, go to the principal. Well, why are you sending them to me? I'm thinking, as a leader, why are you sending them to me when this was a decision that was made on the district level? So if families have a question about funding and why this particular school is receiving funding over this school, why are you, directing parents
to the
principal
when it should have been decided on the district level?
Right.
And, yeah.
Well, let's say that this letter is coming out possibly around this time, where it is the school year has ended. Teachers are gone. And typically around this time, assistant principals and principals are attending different retreats. So maybe one of their summer retreats has been talking about this student-based funding program and what it actually looks like. And maybe the principals have details in reference to how students are tiered based off their 3rd grade or maybe 8th grade scores, and the money that actually is attached to them. And I'm saying attached, but I'm probably using the wrong level of wrong language, but money that's attached to the kids in reference to the appropriateness of what it takes to educate them.
And
And
I like that.
that does make sense.
That makes sense.
Our principals just came out of their retreat, and I'm sure they, received that information.
Mhm. Right. And the vagueness is let's just be honest, that's what the state does.
Mm-hmm.
That's what districts do. They give you a level of vagueness. Now, schools, you kind of fill in the gaps and giving the details to the parents as to how you're going to set this platform up for your school and what it looks like on the level of having the parents understand this new funding system.
So the budget has already been determined before the principals share. That's what you're saying?
But typically it does. Like, they're still working out the kinks now with General Assembly and legislation as it relates to budgeting.
Right.
So on the state level, they're still working out the details of budgeting. On the district level, there's still conversation as it relates to budgeting. I know maybe about 2 weeks ago here in Wake County County Commissioners voted as to whether or not they were going to approve the funding request that was submitted by the school district. So I think the details of everything is still being leveled out. So there may be, possibly a full approval of requests, or maybe maybe some cuts in reference to the amount of funds that's been requested. But one of the things that I continue to see and continue to read is that because the state has this deficit in funding, and if we can't make it up on the district level, it continues to widen the achievement gap, especially for African American, low income, and Hispanic students.
Mm-hmm.
Tell you, it's a major responsibility dealing with the budget, and it's, working at a low-income school with low-income families,
Mm-hmm.
or a school that's small.
Mm-hmm.
It just seems so unfair. But
because that goes back to what you said, Sheldon. Who determines whether our school has adequate resources?
Right.
It goes back to the state, and then it trickles from the state down to the district. And one of the things that I actually read, and I was trying to make sure that I kept good notes, like there's this such thing as a state funds matching. So districts that are able to raise more money, the state is able to match that, versus lower income districts that are not able to come up with the necessary platforms to raise as much money. That again puts them in an area, a deficit, as it relates to the appropriation of funds based on student needs, building needs, staffing, in the recruitment of highly qualified teachers and administrators.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And this whole thing where funds, like if a student transfers to another school, the funds follow them. I think that's horrible.
Yeah.
I think but then you got to think, now that school, that child has to be housed in a different school. They need resources now where they're moving to. So it's like a lose-lose kind of situation.
But it's not, in a sense, because some of this emulates the voucher program. It is not at all. They don't attach any of the language associated with the voucher program. But the voucher program is like, look, we're in pretty much the state runs public education. But the state is the one the counties and the state are benefiting from public education. Why not public education benefit from public education in the platform of making it competitive? So if I know school A has these particular programs that I'm looking for my particular child, or if there's a special needs student and they have an outstanding special needs program, I'm going to take my child and I'm going to take my funding and I'm going to put it there. So it forces accountability through competition.
Right.
Very true. But then if you're on the end of the teacher who's a good teacher, they work at a low income school, and all of the parents are moving their children from that school, you know.
That was indicated in the data too. Yeah.
Or even with academics, look at the academic side. A lot of well, I won't say a lot of districts because I can't prove that, but I have known them to move funds because of academics. If a school has low academics, or if they have an F status, and then they try to measure that up against a school with a B status, then it seems as though that the school with the B status gets more assistance. Yeah,
I mean, I'm in agreement with, and I know this may sound crazy, but I'm in agreement because I come from an entrepreneur perspective, and competition is always good. It keeps you sharp, it keeps you innovative, and it establishes a level of accountability. So you're always on the cutting edge, or having to be on the cutting edge of what is your competitive platform. Years ago, when I was in the public school system, schools and teachers and administrators receive compensation for meeting and exceeding expectations, where we receive bonuses. They take stuff like that out of the equation, where it still creates competition. Like if I know that, hey, our school, each of our teachers can get $1,500 extra dollars, like, let's all pull together. What do we need to do to make sure that we're educating our students? Is our school improvement plan focused on or directed toward making sure that we're set up for success academically? So I'm looking at all of those factors in reference to, this is still a business at the end of the day, and our business is educating kids.
Right.
Our obligations as the professionals is for us to be as sharp and equipped as we need to be going into the classrooms, being elements of the school system, to make sure that we're producing highly effective, functional students that can compete out here in the world.
Very
and
true.
if we're not doing that, then we're still shortchanging them, and we're shortchanging what our true capacity is to educate students.
That's true. I agree.
So that's how I actually look at the platform of it being competitive. Make it competitive. Let's do this. Yeah, but not doing so, it's just, it allows us to be lazy in a sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can put these plans in place, but what was it? No Child Left Behind. The key word was kids reaching a level of proficiency. So how now, a case from last year, we're talking about kids just reaching basic education. Basic education is far from proficiency. Like basic, so I'm struggling with, hey, how do we find this medium here in reference to making sure that we're really educating our kids? And we're saying that all kids can learn. All kids can learn on a basic level. So basic science, basic history, basic reading, writing, and math, arithmetic, but basic doesn't get them in the do. Basic doesn't make them as sharply competitive as districts and schools and systems that have the cutting edge, that can put extra supports in place so that students can reach a level of competitiveness upon graduation.
Very true. And that's like in my school district, I struggle with, they just started this one-to-one iPad thing. So every kid gets an iPad, but a lot of our children are, underprivileged, and they go home to houses with no internet service. So you want to, provide them with the opportunity to use the technology, because this is 2019. But they take these iPads home. A lot of them, their families, I've seen situations their parents have sold the iPads for different reasons. You know, they lose the iPads, they crack the iPads, but then we want them to use the iPads at home for homework, for projects, you know, for education, but they have no internet at home. So then what, and now we've spent millions, you know, of dollars for everybody to have an iPad, but is that good fun? You know, is that a good way to use funding?
It's not. It's truly not. No, not at all. I mean, and again, in doing this research too, you begin to see how districts have like literally wasted money, like millions of dollars flushed down the toilet, for which we could have looked at setting up programs for children that need areas of enrichment. Enrichment doesn't always mean I'm going to give you this, but let's set up systems within the community that can support. Like, what about a Boys and Girls Club? Why can't we have extended hours there where they can go and work on their assignments and get the extra help and support that they need? It doesn't constitute giving every kid an iPad. We want to give them access to the computer and the systems and the support that they need, but access to a technology device doesn't actually make them proficient in that particular area of expanding their digital learning or technology competency.
Of course. Or they'll say, well, the kids could go to McDonald's, they could go to Starbucks, they could go to the library, but a lot of my kids, their parents have no transportation.
Mm-hmm.
So how are they getting, like you said, if you had a system set up where they can go to a local place, you know, to use their iPad or whatever they're using, have internet access, but you can't expect families to make adjustments because you've given their child an iPad.
Right.
That's not fair.
Right. And so then, you know, I see where, you know, schools tack it on, well, it's a fine and you're going to have to pay for it before you graduate. And it just stays on their record like, well, how am I going to be able to pay for it? I wasn't be able to pay for it then. How am I going to pay for it now?
Right.
Like, so it's just not the smartest. It's not, I don't know how people sit and think that it's a good idea and it reaches a status of approval, but it's just not the smartest actions to take.
No, it's not. And they had parents sign, you know, permission slips. Do you want your child to have an iPad? But if you say no, your kid now is in class without an iPad while everybody else has one, you know. So now it's like a trickle down, like a, you know, a trickle down effect. Okay, your kid can't have one in class because you know, if he or she breaks it, you can't afford to buy another one. But now your kid is sitting in class and not fully engaged as the other students are.
Right. Right.
You know, so I don't know. I don't really agree with the whole, when it comes to this whole thing with the iPads and the technology, especially in the district that I'm in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, and again, just talking about research from last semester to now, technology is the introduction and utilization of technology is not a precursor for the enhancement of intellectual capital.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't necessarily increase a student's reading ability, mathematical skills. It gives them a platform for easier access to it, but it does not make them necessarily more proficient.
Right. Right. I like that because I feel like that's what they think it does.
No. Well, they need to put some of us in their on their boards then. Yeah. It really, really doesn't. Or they need to go back to school or do some more research.
Right.
But yeah, it doesn't.
Right. Well, we have 3 minutes left. So any closing remarks, anything you want me to add on here?
I mean, and again, we're talking about the inappropriateness of the plan. I mean, and we're talking about the allotment of positions. We may see teachers that lose their job or have to transfer to another school based off of the needs of the school and the needs of the students that are within that school. So that can be a little disruptive, especially if it's done at the last minute. So I definitely, there needs to be an understanding of how this particular student budgeting plan has an impact on other individuals that are involved on the service level, teaching level, teacher aides, teacher assistants. Does that affect our bus drivers and funding for our bus drivers as well? So again, how does it have a domino effect?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I can't spell. Okay. Well, I think we have a lot here. Anything about like legal law? Anything you want me to add? Because I know Sheldon said he'll add.
I'll go back through it and look and add what I see, and then I'll try my very best to do it correctly this time so that you all can have access to it.
Oh.
I mean, the only thing that I would say from a legal perspective is like, okay, 10th Amendment, it is all about the state. State, do your thing in regards to education. But we still have this Department of Education. We still have these federal mandates that come down. So again, like, either they're going to be all in or just get out the way. But what it actually says is that everything that I'm reading says that the state doesn't, and the districts don't have really what it takes.
It's about to cut us off.
To do funding. We don't have what it takes to really adequately formulate a system for funding that is appropriate for our disadvantaged low-income community while not taking anything from our affluent communities.
Okay.
You'll talk for us again?
Tanya, that's for you.
What do you say?
You'll talk for us again?
Sure.
Okay.
All right. So Sheldon, I'm gonna send this over to you. Okay.
Okay.
And maybe I'll tell Toinette, maybe she could just send you whatever she got from it, and then maybe you could just add it since she wasn't able because of the storm.
Yeah, I'll send you over my information.
All right, and if
give me a few minutes to doll it up, and I'll get it sent over.
Okay, and I'll share it, and if you have to keep asking for permission to get in, I'll just keep giving you permission until I find a better way.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, y'all. Talk soon.
All right. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.